Overview. The aircraft has two separate inertial reference systems, IRS, driven by laser gyros and accelerometers. Each IRS provides attitude information for the two PFDs, heading information for the NDs and DBIs, position information for both GNSX. The IRS also provides information to the following: Flight Guidance System, Weather Radar, GPWS, Flight Data Recorder, TCAS, if fitted. The IRS is controlled by a Mode Select Panel, MSP, situated on the first officer's side console. Other flight deck components of the IRS are a heading switch to select true or magnetic north, an attitude heading transfer switch, an IRS fan fail indication, an IRS DC backup indication. That now completes the overview for the IRS. The next section will cover a general description of the IRS. Description of the IRS. IRS number 1 normally provides information to the captain's EFIS. IRS number 2 normally provides information to the first officer's EFIS. IRS number 1 normally provides information to the number 2 DBI, and IRS number 2 normally provides information to the number 1 DBI. This makes it easy for the pilots to compare the two heading references. In the event of a single IRS failure, the remaining IRS can provide information to all 4 EFIS screens. The IRS has 4 modes of operation: Align, Downmode Align, Navigation, and Attitude. Before the IRS can be used, it must be aligned. In Align mode, the IRS calculates present attitude, heading, and position. The longer that the IRS remains in the Align mode, the more accurate the IRS information becomes. Alignment will only be completed if the present position has been entered into the GNSX. The aircraft must always be on the ground and stationary during alignment. Navigation mode allows the IRS to output the present attitude, heading, and position information once alignment is complete. This is the normal operating mode. Downmode Align provides a fast realignment of the IRS.
This mode can only be used to correct any attitude, heading or position errors that may have accumulated during operation.
A downmode align can only be performed after the IRS has entered the navigation mode. The aircraft must be on the ground and stationary. Attitude mode allows the IRS to be realigned in flight to provide standby attitude and heading information on the EFIS and DBIs. This mode is too inaccurate for normal navigation and must only be used if an IRS has lost its attitude and heading reference. The only way to exit the attitude mode is to switch off the IRS. Mode Select panel. The operating mode of each IRS is selected from the Mode Select panel, MSP. The MSP is located on the first officer's side panel. It consists of two identical control knobs and indicators. The left knob controls IRS 1 and the right knob controls IRS 2.
Each selector has 4 positions.
The off switch position causes all power to be removed from the IRS. The align switch position selects the align mode and allows the present position to be entered into the IRS via the GNSX. Align is also used for downmode align. The nav switch position selects the navigation mode when alignment is complete. When nav is selected directly from off, the IRS will enter the align mode before automatically entering the navigation mode. This is the normal method of alignment. The attitude switch provides standby attitude and heading information, but no navigation capability. The amber nav off annunciator is illuminated whenever the power is available and the system is not in the navigation mode, or if there is a system fault. The amber nav off annunciators will flash if the system is aligned but still requires the entry of present position to enter navigation mode. Heading switch. The heading switch is situated on the captain's transfer panel. The switch allows selection of magnetic or true heading reference for the NDs, DBIs and GNSX. A guard prevents magnetic from being deselected accidentally. This is the normal operating position. True is selected by lifting the guard and selecting the switch to the true position. When True is selected, a white True annunciation appears at the top of the ND. Above certain latitudes as specified in the MOM, the IRS must be operated with the heading selected to True. That completes the description of the IRS. The next section will cover the normal operations of the IRS.
Initial alignment.
To perform the initial alignment of the IRS, the aircraft must be stationary. Nav is selected on both MSP control knobs. The aircraft's present position must be entered via the GNSX, which will be covered later. Even though nav has been selected, the system first enters align mode. When the system is fully aligned, it automatically enters navigation mode and the nav off lights extinguish. The IRS is now ready to navigate. If the aircraft is moved before the nav off annunciators extinguish, the IRS will stop aligning. The initial alignment process takes between 2.5 and 15 minutes, depending on latitude. The higher the latitude, the longer the alignment time. Realignment. Downmode align. If there is a long period between IRS alignment and takeoff, the IRS information is subject to drift. Even though the error is likely to be very small, IRS information can be updated by realigning downmode align at a known ground position, e.g. stand position or runway threshold. Remember that the aircraft must be stationary during alignment and realignment. To realign the IRS, downmode align, the IRS must be in the navigation mode. Align is selected and the IRS enters the downmode align. Attitude and heading information is removed and the nav off annunciators illuminate. The present position is then entered through the GNSX. This is followed by an immediate selection to the nav position. The system takes approximately 30 seconds to realign. Once realigned, the nav off annunciators extinguish and the attitude and heading reference are restored to EFIS. Downmode align is always carried out on the turnaround between flights. This is because the IRS drift rate could be as high as 2 miles per hour. Finally, it is important to note that both MSP control knobs must be selected to off when powering down the aircraft prior to leaving the flight deck. Failure of an IRS. Failure of an IRS is indicated by red attitude and heading flags on the appropriate EFIS displays. Attitude and heading information is removed to prevent confusion. The remaining IRS can provide data to all 4 EFIS displays. This is achieved by selecting the guarded attitude heading transfer switch from norm to both 1 or both 2. If one IRS is providing all attitude and heading information, Attitude 1 Heading 1 or Attitude 2 Heading 2 will appear at the top right of the screens in yellow. In this example, the attitude heading switch is selected to both 2, which means that IRS number 2 is supplying all attitude and heading information. The attitude heading switch does not transfer heading information for the DBIs. The heading information on the affected DBI remains failed even after selecting the attitude heading transfer switch to either both 1 or both 2. Loss of reference. In the unlikely event of a temporary power loss or a spurious fault, IRS reference may be lost. Normally, attitude and heading information is restored by the use of the transfer switch. However, basic attitude and heading information may be restored by selecting Attitude. Attitude mode can only be deselected by turning the IRS to Off. Loss of IRS fan. Each IRS has a cooling fan which is operational when the MSP is selected to Align, Nav or Attitude. If the fan fails, the IRS may overheat.
If the fan fails, IRS-1 or IRS-2 will indicate a fan failure.
There is no in-flight action. On the ground, use of the IRS should be minimized. The EFIS IRS caption on the air conditioning panel will also illuminate, along with the system repeater on the central warning panel. Loss of electrical power to the IRS. The IRS is designed to remain operational even after a serious electrical malfunction. Each IRS has two power supplies. The system is normally supplied by its primary supply, but automatically reverts to its secondary supply in the event of a primary power failure. The IRS power supplies are as follows. For IRS number 1, the primary power supply is essential AC. The secondary supply is the battery bus bar. For IRS number 2, the primary power supply is AC bus 2. The secondary supply is essential DC. If power is reduced to the essential level, IRS number 1 will still be supplied by its primary supply, but IRS number 2 will automatically transfer to its secondary supply. If power is reduced to the emergency level, then IRS number 1 will automatically transfer to its secondary supply. Number 2 IRS will not be powered. The IRS DC backup annunciator will illuminate on the central warning panel whenever secondary power is lost to either IRS, but primary power is still available. The purpose of the annunciator is to warn the pilot of reduced system redundancy. There is no in-flight action required, but maintenance should be informed upon arrival. That completes the lesson on the IRS.